Hello and welcome to Business Daily on Trust Television, and we are set to keep you updated on major happenings in the world of business, finance, the Nigerian economy, the global economy, and the stock market is not left out. I am your host, Christiana Amodu Otiya. Thank you for joining in. First, we begin with the headlines for today. We begin from what's happening with Nigeria's inflation. Nigeria's CPI eases to 21.34% in the month of December 2022. And now, in the power sector, electricity, international and bilateral consumers owe Nigeria 4.7 billion naira, and that's coming from the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC. We'll give you more update in the business roundup during the course of the program. I'll take a short break. When we return, we'll get straight into the stock market. Please stay. Welcome back. Now let's get to the stock market and see what is happening with the numbers. We begin from the local bars in Nigeria. Now we are seeing the local exchange open the week bearish, opening in the red zone, down 0.31%. The benchmark all share index settled at 52,348.82. Looking at the activity chart, a total volume of 221.85 million shares valued at 3.25 billion naira change hands in 5,219 deals on the floor of the local bars. The equity cap settled at 28.51 trillion naira. Now let's go over to other African bourses. We update you on the program, talking about the Africa's largest exchange, that's the JSE in South Africa. We are seeing the JSE opening in the negative zone, and in Ghana we are seeing a very marginal upward trend there, 0.01%. In South Africa, we saw that President Cyril Ramaphosa cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos to deal with the ongoing energy crisis in South Africa. Calls have been made for President Cyril Ramaphosa to declare a state of emergency in the current economic situation in the country. A lot happening, especially with the power sector and the energy crisis in South Africa. Now going over to Wall Street, let's see what's happening with the numbers in the US. So it's still staying green in the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite all staying largely in the green zone. And markets, of course, are looking towards what to expect, especially as the World Economic Forum kickstarts in Davos, Switzerland. Going down to European Straits, European markets are also monitoring news coming out on the economy, talking about the FTSE 100 in the UK, what's happening with the CAC in France, and also the DAX in Germany. These markets in Europe are looking for cues as to how the market can stay in positive zone. The FTSE is down 0.05%. The CAC in France is up 0.20%. And in Germany, we are seeing the German DAX climb 0.14%. Now, investors are digesting economic data from China. That's the key focus for today. Talking about on the economic data front, we have China's GDP missing expectation. And that's really the focus for markets now. A lot of analysts predicted that we're going to see a growth for China at about over 5.5%. But according to what we are seeing from the Statistics Bureau in China, the nation's gross domestic product grew by 3% in the year 2022, marking one of the slowest growths in decades. I think the slowest growth since the 1970s. Talking about the growth that we are seeing from China. However, we are seeing the markets in Asia shrugging off these concerns. Although analysts have said the markets will also continue to react to these data that have come out from China. Remember, China is opening its borders after the borders was long shut due to the COVID-19 situation. Also, we saw news that China's population declined in the year 2022, and the mainland population, excluding foreigners, fell by 850,000 people in 2022 to 1.4 billion people, according to China's Statistics Bureau. The country reported 9.56 million births and 10.41 million deaths in the year 2022. 2022. So mainland China, the Shanghai Composite is up 1.01%, and South Korea's Kospi is shedding 0.85% at 2,379.39. Let's go over to the commodities chart. Oil prices were mixed on Tuesday after China posted its weakest economic growth in nearly half a century, while its late 2022 U-turn in COVID policy still supported hopes or recovery in the oil market. Now, Brent crude is still standing strong, $84.73 per barrel, up 0.32%. Recall that the benchmark for oil in Nigeria's 2023 budget is put at $75 per barrel. So that's a good cap from what we are seeing for Brent crude. Now remember, Brent crude is the international benchmark, but what we have in Nigeria is Bonny Light. However, it's still a good look basically for Nigeria. Is it Huru yet? Definitely. But having this price cap still looks good in terms of revenue generation, having more money is coming to the coffers for Nigeria. For the yellow metal gold, the bullion down 0.39% at $1,910 per ounce. We are seeing this, the gold is being weighed by an uptick in the US dollar. Now, the bullion is a zero yielding asset. Lower rates tend to be beneficial for gold as they reduce the opportunity cost of holding the assets. For agro commodities now, the only grain we have on this chart is coming from cocoa, up 0.42%, $2,651. For palm oil is down. It's down 0.96% at $3,815. Now let's turn our focus to the cryptocurrency market. Now, Bitcoin began the year 2022 on a very positive note, $21,202. Remember, Bitcoin is the largest digital token. Now we are seeing a rally of close to 28% since the year commenced for Bitcoin, the flagship cryptocurrency. Of course, this is a very far cry from the $68,000 we saw Bitcoin hit sometime in the year 2021. However, the market looked very grim for cryptocurrency in the year 2022. Are we seeing a rebound coming back to the market? The only negative here on this chart is for Ethereum, down 0.82% at $1,566.46. Now the Binance coin is at $301. Those are the numbers we have for you on the program today. So the market is, there's a whole lot for the market to take in. It's a buffet for the stock market. Davos news is coming out from Davos. The IMF is saying that the economic growth is going to bottom out in the year 2023, but an uptick is expected in the year 2024. We'll bring updates from the World Economic Forum to you on the program, talk about what world leaders, business leaders are saying, their fears of a global recession, how that will also affect emerging economies like Nigeria will also come to play. Now, let's quickly give you a roundup of business stories. Take a listen.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization's FAO Food Price Index, global food prices decreased. In a surprising turn of events, Nigeria's CPI eased to 21.34% in December 2022, despite the Christmas and New Year festivities, dropping from 21.47% recorded in November, making the new figure the first drop in 11 months. This is according to the latest inflation report by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. The carefully studied index of food inflation dropped from 24.13% in November 2022 to 23.75% in December 2022. Contrarily, the core inflation index, which does not include the unpredictable costs of agricultural commodities, was 18.49% in December 2022. The difference between this and the 18.24% observed in November 2022 is 24.8 basis points. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, on Sunday said international and bilateral power consumers that receive their supply from Nigeria owe the country around 4.71 billion naira. Despite continued efforts to settle the bills, 10 international, bilateral, and special power users in Nigeria failed to submit the money within a 6-month window. The NERC made this information public in its first and second quarter reports of 2022, naming the debtors as Odukpani, CEET, Paras SBEE, Ajakuta Steel, amongst others. The Commission emphasized that the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company (PLC) and the power market operator were the recipients of the debt owed by the power businesses.
That's it for the roundup of business stories we have on the program for you today. Our focal point for the program today, of course, will be on the inflation numbers that we saw released by the National Bureau of Statistics. Inflation easing to 21.34% compared to November 2022 headline inflation rate, which was 21.47%. So we're beginning to see the inflation numbers ease. A lot of experts and market watchers have said, are we seeing that inflation has peaked, or what should be the situation? Should expectations of Nigerians see another rise in coming months? I will be joined by two gentlemen on the program today, and they will be giving perspective to this discussion. Issues have come up that the challenges facing inflation are largely structural. How then can that be addressed? This is the first inflation report we are seeing for the year 2023. What does this mean going forward? Also, the planting season is upon us. How will this affect the array of the food basket and the numbers that are coming out from the NBS? It promises to be packed and insightful on the program today. We'll be back shortly after this.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130.
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Or really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Welcome back, and thank you for still staying with us. If you're just joining the program, this is Business Daily, and we're coming to you from our studios, Trust Television Studios in the Federal Capital Territory. Now we're going straight to the conversation for today. I have my guest in the studio with me, my in-studio guest, who is John Bosco Ezinwa. He is a business developer. Welcome to the program, John Bosco.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us again on
thank you.
the program. I also have a virtual guest that will be joining the discussion today. He's Dr. Mukhtar Imam. He is a political economist. He's joining us from Gombe State. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. I want to begin with you, John Bosco, to speak to these inflation numbers that we saw from the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics, 21.34, and the numbers are beginning to ease from 21.47. What does this mean to you?
Well, it's a welcome development, but it's temporary, if you ask me, from analysis. Given that we're just come out of a festive season, and you know, when there's festive season, there are going to be trades. A lot of activities will happen. People will spend freely, and no hold bar when we come to our spending. Travels will happen, vacations we will go, and that is what happened. Is more or less a trend analysis. It's expected that inflationary figures will drop in the month of December, and leading into the electioneering months, a few days for election, it will continue in that, because money will be available for spending, and even the CBN policy currently to change the currency will lead to more spending. People will have to turn in some of their monies back into the bank. So it's expected. I think it's temporary, but let's see what happens to the economy.
Okay, I want to hear the thoughts of Dr. Mukhtar Imam now. He is a political economist. Now, John Bosco has opined that what we are seeing now is a temporary ease. The inflation numbers are expected to climb for him. What are your thoughts on especially this report from the NBS?
I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. The festivities are not the only indicators that point in the direction of what we're seeing, the drop in inflationary rate. Basically, part of contributes to the current scenario we're witnessing is basically the ease, or rather the drop in insecurity, sort of. You will agree that it is on agricultural produce, which is basically food inflation. Part of the reason why we experienced a hike in that over the year was because of, or partly because of the fact that over 40,000 hectares, for example, of arable land was abandoned in northern Nigeria, food baskets of the country. It meant technically that farmers basically had to run for their lives, had to abandon their farm, and so on and so forth. So in the last few months, we're beginning to see a sharp rise in levels of security across the country. And that has contributed to a return of most of these farmers. I can tell from first-hand visits to most of these places that activities are beginning to pick up gradually. We're beginning to see farmers return. And so therefore, those who have the capacity to basically go into irrigation farming are largely and aggressively going into that. And so we're beginning to see a bit of ease. The ease we're seeing right now did not just happen overnight. It did not just, while agreeing with what the guest in the studio has said, the festive seasons are always, it is trendy. When the festive seasons are around, people tend to spend more and people tend to go on vacation more and so on and so forth. But a contributory factor is what I'm trying to talk about. And that is a huge factor for us to hold on to, because I believe that going forward, if all things being equal, in the course of the election and the post-election period, we continue to see this drop in levels of kidnappings and insecurity and so on and so forth in parts of the country, then we might witness a further drop in the inflationary rate.
Okay, so further drop for Dr. Mukhtar Imam. I want to stay with Dr. Imam to speak to some of these issues. You're in Gombe State, and just like you mentioned, the food basket is very critical when we are talking about issues around inflation. What's the on ground? What have you noticed, or what's the on ground report from there?
Well, like I said earlier, quite frankly, the security operatives are doing so much. We're beginning to see, well, partly because of the sophistry that we're beginning to witness in the arming of our security operatives. We're beginning to see the government do a lot more in the Tucano jets that are arriving into the country, in provision of equipment, some more sophisticated equipment into the hands of security operatives. And of course, perhaps we are seeing some level of motivation from the hierarchy. And so on ground, what that transcends to on the ground is that we're beginning to see, like I said, a pickup in activities, not just in agriculture, across all different segments of society or of the economy. Tourism is gradually beginning to pick up as well. Jos is witnessing a rise in that. So also is Taraba State. And so these are some of the things that are basically going on in the northern part of the country at the moment. Government at all levels, I see them doing, or rather being a lot more proactive. As a social scientist, there are a lot of factors that we can attribute that to, perhaps the winding up of tenure, perhaps the possibility of winning re-elections and so on and so forth. But we're seeing people return back to their farms, which is a good thing. That in itself will be able to bring some ease, and people are beginning to breathe sigh of relief. Infrastructural development, of course, is another issue. Gradually, as you all will agree, capital projects and infrastructural development are basically short, medium, and long term. but we're gradually seeing these infrastructural projects and development making inroads into some part of northern Nigeria, and that in itself is aiding to bring some ease to populace.
John Bosco, I want to come to you now. A lot of times, even for the year 2022, when we speak about inflation, on the program, I know as the reports come out, we try to analyze the report on the program. The issue has always been structural challenges, issues around, like he mentioned, infrastructure, security, wastages. Now, going forward, what do you think are the solutions that should come to front burner?
Well, interestingly, for the last 11 months, as you mentioned, each time the NBS releases a figure, there's always discourse around it. And just like Dr. Mukhtar mentioned, there are also structural issues, given that there are infrastructure that are supposed to be in place. Yes, security is key for us to get more ease on this. If there are ease, people would travel conveniently across the nation, go through all of the roads, and take business from one place to another. If also in terms of even the cost of petrol and diesel,
fuel scarcity
is a huge. For example, why I said temporary, because you know currently some of the states, despite the subsidy, are selling petroleum product at high cost. For example, I know in Nasarawa currently is 280 naira to 300 naira. Can you imagine? And in the south, it's about 400 naira. So this will affect these gains that have been recorded, this gain that's been recorded recently. So security is a key structure that needs to be in place. Infrastructures need to be key because the roads need to be fixed. If the roads are not fixed, people will not ply safely to do their work and all of that. And similarly, the government must continue to support businesses. If local businesses are not supported and strengthened, giving them good market spaces, security, and then this current CBN policy, finding an ease around it, all of this gain achieved recently would go away.
Okay. Dr. Mukhtar, being a political economist, I want you to speak to issues around money supply and election spending, what that means for expectations for inflation in coming months.
Well, there will be, to a certain extent. You see, we also have to look at this side by side, the current electoral act and how that is going to play out with respect to spending for the election. Of course, we have politicians in this country that are defiant, who would want to subvert the system and try to see how they can, they can circumvent it. But the truth of the matter is, we are we are neck deep into the election period. Whatever spending we would have seen, I think we're almost at the climax of it at this point in time. That, of course, is going to certainly affect the inflationary rates. But the truth of the matter is, you see, Nigeria's inflation is sort of like a double-edged sword inflation, where you have, we are talking about that there's a crunch in cash. And then we are also faced with the crisis of trying to also get people to spend as well. It's quite difficult when you do not have and you're expected to spend and you're expected to throw into the system. These are some of the things that I think the monetary policies need to begin to give consideration to. When we talk about trickle-down economics, it's actually tricky in a certain way, because you see, the idea of the social intervention program was to see that the poorest of the poor are targeted and that money gets into their hand and that spending goes on and that those in the blue-collar sector basically get to have something tangible to be able to get their businesses going. But the truth of the matter is that we did not see these things play out. Trickle-down economy in our own case did not. Our inflationary situation is basically dicey. It's sort of like a double-edged sword, like I said. And that's the reason why, you see, to delve into what my colleague in the studio talked about, even when the MPR basically increased the rates by 500 points, I think, at the last meeting, I did not see that having any meaningful or sustainable impact on the economy. If the aim of that, as they said, was to try to fight the inflationary rates. First of all, they started with the security printing, which basically led to flooding the system. And when I talk about the system, I'm talking about the superstructure. It did not get to the substructure. And that's why I was saying trickle-down economy is not working in our own case. And if you're trying to do that, I mean, what we saw was a policy somersault in terms of the security printing. It didn't work well. And that's partly the reason why the central government is trying to sweep up the old.
Dr. Mukhtar.
Again, yes, please.
Yes, time is never our friend when we have these discussions. But I'm glad you brought in the slant of the MPR. Now, the CBN governor, the press statement came in yesterday that the CBN governor is back to work. And the MPC, the first MPC for the year, is supposed to take place next week. What are your expectations? In 30 seconds, did I get the expectations of John Bosco in the studio?
I hope we do not see a rise because it's going to be counterproductive. When you look at credits to household, individual, and even private sector ratio, it is nothing to write home about in this country. People don't borrow from commercial banks. They rather go to loan sharks because the cumbersome nature of policies and procedures in the commercial banks will chase people away. That will have very little impact on the economy. Look, there is nowhere in the world where monetary policies have ever turned things around without a corresponding fiscal policy.
Sure.
But the government needs to do a lot.
Okay, John Bosco.
I'll not repeat what Dr. Mukhtar said. I agree with him completely. But interestingly, I would just have to say the CBN at this point have to do right by Nigerians. Do right, simply just do right.
Okay, do right by Nigerians. And Dr. Mukhtar says we need an alignment between the monetary angle and the fiscal angle of governments. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. I was joined by John Bosco Ezenwa. He is a business developer, and Dr. Mukhtar Imam, political economist. He joined us virtually from Gombe. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
And that's where we call it a wrap for the program today. That's the size of the package we have for you on Business Daily today. Don't forget you can catch up on all updates on our social media platforms, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. Get all the information you need to know about news making the rounds in the polity and major developments in the world of business. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for joining in. Continue to stay safe. Bye for now.